Hey everybody, Kurt from Hemispheres here. I'm going to do a quick video on how to adjust a vertical up kicker switch. VUK as it's referred to, but that's a vertical up kicker. I have a customer that has a Star Wars. It's just firing repeatedly. I'm using a King Kong here. It's a very similar system setup. But you basically have a kicker in the center of the dish where the ball lands on it, and there's a switch that tells the kicker to fire. And the switch is basically that piece right there, okay? In the center is your kicker. So switch, kicker. Switch tells the kicker to fire. So you need the switch to work for the kicker to work, okay? Let me get my ball back here. So now I'm going to liven the playfield, and you can test this pretty quickly. Liven the playfield meaning when you open your coin door, your playfield goes dark. That is this button right here, the coin door plate. Pushes on this button, that livens up the playfield. But when you open the door, obviously everything goes dark and the playfield is out. Pull the switch out. Just grab it, pull it. Your playfield is now live again. Okay, so when you go to do the test, and if you don't have a telescopic magnet, I strongly suggest one. They're great. Put the ball in there. There you go. You can throw the ball in the, just throw it in there too, but then you're going to try to retrieve it every time. So I just basically do this. Okay, so obviously it's telling the kicker to fire. It's working fine, right? So next thing I do, go into the menu. Black button gets you in the menu. Green backs you out. The red scroll. So black, black again. I'm going to go down with a red to diagnostics. Black to switch. Black again. And I'm now in switch test. So basically every switch I push on the playfield, it will show up on the screen. So, that said, same thing. Now it's just telling me with a little tone that my switch works, and it's the King Kong switch 38K VUK. Now if I go on there quick and get off, excuse me, it won't fire. So if I go on and off quickly, there's my switch, that black box, that white box that keeps lighting up. So that's my switch. So obviously this game's working fine, but if you have a stuck switch, let's just say it was stuck shut, guess what it's going to do? It's going to keep trying to fire it. All right, so I took the balls out of the game and raised the playfield. If you don't know how to do that, there's probably 1,000 videos out there that show you. It's not that difficult. But here is the assembly itself. Here's the kicker itself. Here's the switch. Now the switch, what we were looking at the top is the actual actuator. That's this guy right here, this piece of metal. So there it is. Now if I just hold that down, see what it wants to do? It's trying to clear it out of there, okay? So if you have a stuck switch, that's what your game's going to do. On the flip side of that, if you have a switch that doesn't work, it won't fire. The game will eventually go into a ball search and kick it out, but you didn't get the award. It did not score. The switch tells it what it needs to know. The game doesn't know what to do if the switch doesn't tell it to do it. So this switch tells this coil to fire when the ball lands on it. In the case of my customer, I'm assuming his switch is either misadjusted or it's just simply stuck or bound up. So this actuator is just a piece of metal. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can see what's going on here. That's a micro switch, but the actuator, the piece of metal, is pushing on that orange button. That orange button is actually, that's really the switch, okay? So I just disabled my playfield so it's dark, so now I can hit it and the coil will not fire. But if you listen, you can hear that switch clicking. And what you want to do is you want to hear that click. This is really hard to do one-handed and try to video. You want to hear that click. You see the top? See the arch part there? You want that ball to make sure it's clicking and closing that switch. If you need to adjust this actuator, you do need to be careful. Here's why. That actuator is just squeezed into that switch. If you see that split of the metal there, if you squeeze that, you can pull that actuator right out of the switch. I don't know why my phone will not focus, but anyway, you got to be careful with that. So you don't want to be going gorilla on that. So what I do when I go to adjust this is if I want to adjust so that the ball actuates the switch, if I bend this piece of metal up, if I curve it up towards the playfield or towards the ceiling when the playfield is down, let's call it that, that will allow this switch to actuate earlier. Okay, it's going to click earlier. The opposite is if I bend the looped part, the actual part the ball lands on, if I bend that down, then the switch will activate later. Okay, so it's basically an adjustment of the actuator. And to do this, I use a decent pair of needle nose. I've had this pair forever. I love this pair, but it's a nice fine pair. You don't want a big gorilla pair, okay? Because I can get on this actuator and I can tweak it, okay? I can tweak it how I want. Now, when I do this, and I need a third hand to video this to, let's just imagine that pair of needle nose was still on there, I would bottom this switch out, and then I would be holding it right here, and then I would be tweaking up or down. Why? Because that will prevent me from pulling that metal out of that switch, okay? If I just firmly put my finger, I'm trying to do this best I can for you guys. If I firmly put my finger on this switch and hold it, push down here so that I can't tear it out of the switch, I can make my adjustment, okay? It's really quite a simple adjustment. Now, before you go through all this, obviously make sure you're not interfering with the metal or the wood. Make sure it's nice and free. It should click like this. It should be free. Obviously, make sure your wires are hooked up if it's not working whatsoever. My customer, it's firing over and over, so you know the wires are fine. So, you know, that's the simple way to adjust the switch. Now, if you can't get to it, like this one's pretty easy, obviously. I can get right to it. It's right on the edge of the playfield. Simply pull your device, you know, kill the game, turn the power off, pull your wood screws. In this case, you got 5 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You have one connector. You might have to cut a zip tie or two, pull the whole assembly out, and you'll be able to get to it. You'll be able to see it, especially from the top side, and you can hold this thing in your hand, you know, like it would be on the playfield. You could just hold it like this so that it's up and down. Put a ball on it. Listen to it. Do it right on a bench or right in a chair or whatever, so you can see what it's doing. These 2 nuts, I should say screws, they go right through and they thread into, where is this thing? They thread right into the metal. So there's no adjustment there. You could just take those 2 screws out. Don't lose that plate. That plate is part of it. Now, also, I want to make a note here. I have seen where these get over-tightened and it squeezes the internals. And this is specifically for my customer. It will squeeze the internals of that micro switch. So if they have that over-tightened, that switch, I've seen this where the switch will close. You let go of it and that little orange button doesn't click out. And what makes it click out eventually, it quits, is the vibration from the whole device. This coil firing and firing and firing knocks the switch enough. It vibrates the switch enough where that button will then release and you get to start over again. But then every time it goes down, it sticks. So again, the key is clicky, clicky, clicky. You want to make sure it's not only closing. Sorry, I'm listening. It's not only closing, but it's opening. It's that little orange button, and you can feel it on your finger here. You can feel it clicking. And if you got good ears in a quiet room, you can hear it. That's the key, making sure that switch is actually opening and closing the way that it should. It should be a normally open switch. When the ball lands on it, it's closed. Ball gets fired out of there, it's open again. The coil will not fire again as long as it sees that switch reopen. I think I've covered everything I can for simple adjustment, but if you're gonna, you know, take the device out of the game and put it back in, when you go to put them in, make sure these are pretty tight, but don't strip your wood. You know, get them pretty tight though, because there's a lot of vibration going on, and that's part of pinball maintenance anyway. You should really go around and check all your hardware every handful of 500,000 plays, somewhere in there.